Hi, everyone. This is Megan.
And this is Stephen.
And this is the Synchrony podcast, where we talk about transforming apostolic dating culture and ending loneliness in the church. We made it, babe. This episode was hard won.
Yes. We haven't even started the episode yet, and it's already been 2 hours.
Yeah, we are starting this at, let's see, what time?
11:31.
11:31 p.m. local time.
I started setting up before the kids went to bed.
Yeah. We got a new couch.
Yeah.
So we had to get all this set up, which you found using your spiritual gift of Facebook Marketplace.
Yep. I feel the spirit.
Yeah, Stephen has a particular talent when it comes to finding deals on Facebook. So thanks for hunting that down and getting this all put together.
No problem.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress every week.
Yep. What you drinking there?
Cafe 117.
Amazing coffee from Cafe 117. If you
That's
haven't
right.
already heard us talk about Cafe 117, they are an apostolic-owned coffee company that we've partnered with, and we love Cafe 117 not just because of the amazing coffee that they give us and the caffeine that it provides us, but also because 20% of their proceeds go to Compassion Services International to provide disaster relief all around the mission field. So we are grateful to them for that. If you go to the link in our description, you can get a discount, by the way. I forgot to mention that last time. So They do offer a great discount to our listeners. We appreciate them for that. Go get you some real good coffee and put it on subscription so you don't have to worry about rebuying it again, because we all got too much on our minds these days.
Sure.
We're going to talk about that, actually.
Yes, actually we are.
I am excited about this episode,
I am too.
despite how long it took us to get everything set up today.
Yeah, I'm going to have to rebuild up the gusto, though, because I have challenged my carnality in the last 2 hours.
Just about lost your Holy Ghost attempting to attach these mics.
Yes.
So, babe, tonight we are talking about the paradox of choice. We're talking about making choices, making dating decisions. And this is going to get a little weedy.
Yeah. And we also might step on some people's toes.
You think?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
I think so.
Maybe. I could see it, I guess. Yeah, I think this is a really important concept to talk about, though, because we come up against it all the time as we're talking to people. And so, like, to kind of set the stage, I think before we get into the weedy stuff, like, we live in a dating environment where it seems like there is endless access to dating options.
Yep.
In the sense that you can download an app and put in a few criteria and have hundreds of people, theoretically, right, that might be interested in meeting you.
Yep.
Right. Or you can go to a conference and have hundreds of people around you, or you can go to a Facebook group and have, like we took a look at the major like apostolic singles Facebook groups, and there were like, what did we tally up? Like 5,000 in just like the top handful in terms of membership.
No, darling.
It was more than that?
It was like closer to 20,000.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. I really.
And that was just, I think we were just mainly looking at UPCI as well.
Yeah, I don't. It's not
No, they just said apostolic.
Yeah, like maps and a lot of the ones that are pretty big are multi-organizational. But obviously there are some duplicates, like people who are in multiple groups or whatever. But like tons of people, right? So we have this sense that there should be so many options out there, and yet at the same time, most of the people we talk to feel like there is nobody out there for them. Like the right person just does not exist. I mean, I've had that conversation with so many people of like, I just don't believe the right one's out there for me anymore. I'm starting to lose hope, right? So it's this really interesting and difficult dynamic of feeling like we have more access than anyone has ever had to potential partners. And yet we have fewer viable partners than we think we should have. So we're going to talk about choice, and I want to say that that those things might not necessarily be wrong. This isn't us telling anybody that how they think or feel about the choices that are available to them is wrong. But I think we are going to challenge a couple of perceptions.
Mindsets.
Yeah, paradigms.
Yeah, absolutely.
So buckle in is what we're saying, and try not to, get too worked up. So one last caveat before we dive in. We're going to be talking about some literature from the study of psychology. And I know that can be really hit or miss for some people in our church community.
Yeah. And we also want to say that we are not psychologists.
Nope. Not at all.
Counselors either.
Nope.
None of those.
Nope. We are not experts in the field that we are going to draw from, and we acknowledge that.
Yeah, we are taking information from studies that were done by other people who are qualified.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're using our understandings of what is good research and trying to apply that, but we don't
claim any expertise. And we're going to link our sources and resources in the show notes, so you should feel free to take a look at these and, apply your own critical lens to them. And ultimately we're not trying to prescribe anybody anything or force anybody to adopt any kind of mindset. We just want to put some data on your radar that might not have been there before that you can then use to interpret how you view the dating landscape.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I'm going to tell a story.
Okay.
So long ago and far away in the frigid Florida winter of 2015,
yeah.
I was working as a teaching assistant at the University of Florida. So I was doing my master's degree, and I was very blessed. I was the only member of my cohort that was a master's student who was given a teaching assistantship. So they paid for my tuition in exchange for me being a TA in a giant freshman seminar class. And the class was called What is the Good Life? And it was a required course for all freshmen at UF to take across all disciplines. So every semester they would have like a dozen professors teaching classes of like 300 something students, right?
Yeah.
And then each of those professors would have like 5 or 6 TAs assigned to their course. And we would each get like 60 students to do teaching sections with and to grade their papers and stuff. Really great experience. But my first time being a teacher, being a TA, I worked with a psychology professor named Dr. Jesse Dallery. And he was teaching this course, What is the Good Life, which was really meant to be like an introduction to Western philosophy, kind of.
Okay.
But the whole purpose of the course was to make these freshmen really question their goals and help them understand where they were looking to create happiness and well-being in their lives, right? And so Dr. Dallery brought his psychology research and influences from his discipline to bear on his class. And so he brought up a bunch of really cool concepts. One of the concepts that he brought up was the idea of the paradox of choice, which is also the title of a book written by Barry Schwartz, who is also a professor of psychology. I want to say he's at Berkeley, but I could be wrong about that. Don't quote me. But well known in a very prestigious school, well respected, I think, in his profession. And he became medium famous, I guess, in the early 2000s. He wrote his book in 2004. He had a TED Talk that's still on YouTube. Fair warning, if you watch the TED Talk, he's a little bit rough around the edges, and there are some choice vocabulary that might not be super palatable to you as apostolics and some imagery. So just take it with a grain of salt. But he wrote this book, and the basic premise of this book is that having more choices, more options, isn't always better. There are some places in life where it's very important for people to have lots and lots of options at their disposal.
Yeah.
But there's also good data to suggest that there's a point at which having too many options actually hurts us. And that was the premise of his book. And Dr. Dallery broke that down for his students, and I had the benefit of sort of getting to hear that secondhand. And it profoundly changed how I think about choices. And interestingly, it profoundly changed how I thought about our relationship.
Oh, yeah?
It did. 'Cause I was a teaching assistant during the time in which we were broken up.
Okay.
And so this concept, when I, met up with you again after the breakup and started talking to you, this concept came back to my mind about how we make choices. And it did inform how I went about making my choice to reach back out to you.
So I have to give this guy a thank you card.
You should maybe send him a fruit basket. Yeah. I don't think he knows. But yeah, it wouldn't be a bad idea. But yeah, so I want to talk about this concept, the work of Dr. Schwartz, and how it might impact apostolic dating right now.
Can you tell us more about this book? Like, are there any downsides to it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think every sort of pop psychology book that gets a lot of a lot of recognition from like non-academic society, it's always going to push the envelope a little bit, I think, because it's research that's made palatable for a non-academic audience, right?
Okay.
First of all, this is now a very old book. So he wrote the first edition in 2004. So it's a 20-year-old text now, which in the world of academic research means that it is basically ancient history.
Yeah.
So, and he's received some criticism about his work. So, one of the critiques of Barry Schwartz is that he sort of wrote the book ahead of a lot of repeated data. He references quite a few psychological studies in the text, but he draws from just a few researchers, really, who dedicated a lot of time to this.
Okay.
Iyengar is one of them. I can't remember the other one that he leans on really heavily, but there's a few. But he got criticism that there just wasn't enough research or enough variety of perspectives brought to bear. And he actually responds to this in a more recent article that I'll link. He sort of wrote a thought piece reflecting on the critique of his book. And he even acknowledges, he says, I was motivated to write this book because I thought the concepts would be helpful and I wanted to get it in front of people earlier. And he also goes on in that reflection to bring up more recent research that also confirms the thesis of the book. So I thought that was really neat because it showed him reflecting and entertaining other ideas about it, but also bringing more data into the conversation. So that's something to consider as well. He's also been criticized because the book focuses kind of primarily on the experiences of like middle-class Americans and the choices available to them. And I think we can all acknowledge that not everybody has the same availability of choices.
Oh, sure.
Right. But regardless of those critiques, I still think the concept holds up, especially when we're talking about dating.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just sort of, I think, where the book stands in terms of the field and what people should take into account when they're thinking about how these concepts work.
Cool. Okay. So, why should apostolic singles care about this book?
Yeah, so the concept that I want to focus in on really is that Schwartz talks about two types of decision makers, right? So first, he presents this idea that having many choices is not always better than having just a few choices. And he backs this up with some studies where they gave people a variety of levels of choice, right? And they also studied the satisfaction that those individuals had with their choices following that experience.
Okay.
So as an example, the study that Dr. Dallery used to illustrate this, he described a study where they had two groups of people and they gave one group a free poster. And they said, this is yours for free for participating in the study. Thank you so much. Right. And the other group, and they brought both groups in to do these little exercises that they thought were the study, right? But were actually just like fake exercises.
Yeah.
And the poster was the study, but they treated it as a gift, right? So they said, okay, we have this free poster for you that you can take. Thank you for being part of the study. And the other group, they said, hey, we have a poster for you. Thank you for being part of the study. You can have either this poster or you can have this poster. Which one would you want, right? So one group got an option and one group got no option. Both of them got a free poster, okay? And then they went back to them sometime later and said, hey, how do you like your poster? And they found that the first group that had not been given an option were generally more grateful for it. They were happier with it. They were more likely to have it displayed somewhere and still use it as a conversation piece and still have it as part of their life. And the other group were more likely to say something along the lines of like, I like it, but I kind of wish I had picked the other one.
Oh, okay.
Right? And that's one example, but there are several studies where they talk about dissatisfaction or regret that were expressed by members of these studies after they made a choice when they were given lots of options. So Schwartz talks about that concept that when you have more options, your expectations for what you'll get out of your choice becomes higher. He tells I made you listen to the TED Talk.
Yeah.
Do you remember when he talked about with the jeans?
Yeah.
Can you what was your perception of that? Because I thought it was pretty funny.
I thought it was pretty fascinating.
Do a little summary first, the audience.
Yeah. The moral of it was that this gentleman has worn the same kind of jeans for most of his life.
I'm envisioning the 80s dad jeans.
And that's exactly what he said. He's like, I wanted the jeans that there wasn't any other choices but this type of jean.
Like back in the 80s, there was only this one kind of jeans.
And he says they weren't comfortable, but you wore them until they were comfortable,
right.
And then you didn't get rid of them until they were falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said he finally made the choice to finally go and buy some more jeans for the first time in a long time. And he says that he went to the department store and there was 100 different options for cuts and styles and washes and trimmings. So it's all these different styles that he said was really overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And when everything was said and done, it had been about an hour, and he said he had tried on a dozen different style of jeans for the first time in his life. He says he ultimately left with a much higher quality, better fitting pair of jeans.
Yeah, he said the best fitting pair of jeans he'd probably ever worn in his life.
Yeah, and he says in concept it was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
He says, but at the end of the day, he was extremely disappointed with the whole entire experience.
Or he said he I think the way he phrased it, which I thought was so pithy, was I did better, but I felt worse.
Yes.
Yeah. He had made a better choice in terms of quality and fit and aesthetic, but he was less happy with the pair of jeans that he bought. And he said because he expected out of those hundreds of options for there to be the perfect pair.
Yeah.
And the pair he had was good but not perfect.
Yeah. And he says before his expectations were very different. He
Mm-hmm.
said he just wanted something that was going to get him by, and he loved his jeans.
Mm-hmm.
They were fantastic. And he didn't have a reason to need to want more.
Right.
Until he went to the department store that day and saw that he had so many more options. So his expectations changed as a result of it.
Right. And I think this is true, right? It's so easy to get overwhelmed by, especially because we're having ideas thrown at us in the media all the time about what's best.
Yeah.
Something like an aisle of shoes or cereals or anything, right? Just envision for a minute your local department store. He talks about the number of salad dressings available in his...
he says the 114 different types of salad dressings.
Yeah, some crazy number of salad dressings in his local grocery store, right? So we're surrounded by this mountain of options at every turn. And other researchers, I didn't look far into this, but the concept of decision fatigue has also gotten a lot of traction, right? The idea that we live in a society now where there are just so many options that we exhaust our decision-making capabilities just making everyday small choices in life that didn't used to exist for people. So what Dr. Schwartz talks about is that having this giant array of options doesn't necessarily make your choices better or easier or you more satisfied with your choices. But there are people who make choices better than others in this environment of overwhelm.
Oh, sure.
So he kind of separates them into two groups and kind of caricatures them. So one group he calls maximizers, and another group he calls satisficers. Okay. And maximizers are people who believe that they have to choose the best option, right? These are the people who will watch every single product review and make sure that they compare every different prototype and every different thing when they're buying something, right? They're going to look at every option, consider the pros and cons, read all the reviews, get really into the weeds on it because they believe that they have to make the best choice. And ultimately what he found in his research was that those individuals were less satisfied when they finally made choices. It took them longer to make choices. Their choosing was much more difficult. And ultimately, they experienced less satisfaction with their choice, right? On the other hand, satisficers, they weren't necessarily careless about their choices. In fact, many of them were very formulaic with their choices. But when they found something that met their needs and they were able to ascertain that it was good enough, they would buy that thing or go for that decision or take that choice and then basically stop worrying about the opportunity cost of the other choices they could have had.
Yeah.
They focused on which choice they made and went with that and were content. And as a result, the data showed that they experienced more satisfaction ultimately with the choice that they made after just kind of committing to that option.
That's really interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
How do you, what's your view of yourself in terms of that frame? Obviously, these are big. This is kind of a duality that's meant to sort people into big buckets. So this isn't like a personality type.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But how does that resonate with you?
I think I'm a maximizer when it comes to things like
technology.
When it comes to things that are big purchases, like even for instance, like we're about to get the stupid washer and our washing machine's going out and I'm looking into this new piece of state-of-the-art technology of a washer-dryer combo.
Because we have a hard time switching the wet clothes over into the dryer.
Yeah, so it's a 2-in-1 washer-dryer in one single unit. It will wash your clothes and then dry it immediately after. So when you put them in, they will come out dry, full cycle, complete.
Yeah, we're both investing quite a lot into that choice because we're skeptical.
Yeah.
We're hopeful as two ADHD people that really have a hard time with laundry.
Hopefully we'll have to rewash the clothes less.
Yeah. We're hopeful that our clothes will smell better, but we are skeptical of the newness of it all.
Yeah. But that being said, I've done a ton of research into it. But when it comes to mundane choices that are not going to financially make a dent in our wallets, then I don't make that big of a choice about it. I don't go dive that deep into it.
You don't get paralyzed in the cereal aisle.
No, but if you take me to the tool aisle, it's a different story.
Can confirm. Can confirm, having spent many an hour wandering around the clearance racks at Home Depot.
Yeah, but I don't relate with the end product of it, the maximizer, saying that I'm generally less satisfied.
Yeah.
Because I know that by the time I've made my decision, I'm generally weighing pretty heavy to saving money as well. So I get the best bang for my buck, but also I don't break the bank for it. And so I'm usually like, I've got the best for what I'm willing to pay.
Right.
And then that makes me generally more satisfied because I get to do the thing that I want to do for cheaper.
Would it be fair to say, to extrapolate this Home Depot metaphor out a little bit, as I am wont to do, would it be fair to say that once you have established that something meets your values criteria, right, of it meets my budget, it meets the needs of what I require it to do, it's going to be something that I can use for a long time, right? Once you are convinced that it meets those criteria, you can be content with it.
Oh, I absolutely can.
Until it acts up on you. But
even still then, I'll use it until it catches on fire.
It's true. Didn't you have a drill do that recently?
Like last week, yeah.
That's so good. Yeah, so I think in some ways then you're more of a satisficer. Like you invest a lot into the decision.
Yeah.
But ultimately, once you've made your decision, you don't go like, oh man, I wish. Like I've never heard you say, Steven's really into Ryobi tools. You have a bunch of Ryobi tools.
Mainly because once you invest into a brand, you stick with the brand generally.
Right. You have the batteries and you have all the things that go with it. But I've never heard you, after buying a bunch of Ryobi tools, go, man, I really wish I had gone with Craftsman or whatever. Or like,
no.
I don't know, whatever.
No, I know I have the Home Buyers brand, but I also love the versatility of Ryobi.
But I mean, my point is less about the action. We're not here to talk about tools. My point is like, once you have committed to your decision, you don't waste a lot of time going, oh, woe is me, I wish I had maybe considered a different decision, right?
I do make fun of other people with different brands, though.
Just we're not trying to offend people about their tool choices, Steven.
Not for any reason. Like I think one brand is better than the other. I just love the war that goes on between the brands.
Well, you're very loyal to the brands that you select.
Like, it's just like people with Androids. I make fun of them not because I think their phone is inferior. I just think it's a fun argument to pertain to.
You pick your camp and you stake your claim in your camp. I get that.
Yeah.
So in contrast, maximizers, like I think I sometimes am a bit of a maximizer, not in everything. But there are times when I will make a decision and then I'm a little agonized after the decision about, did I do the right one?
Oh, yeah, you totally are.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I worry that I've made a mistake that's going to cascade into some larger effect later on in life, right? Like, oh, maybe we shouldn't, we went through this big house remodel, right? And I've gone through that of like, maybe we shouldn't have focused on this part of the house first. Maybe we should have done the kitchen first. Maybe we should have lived with it like this. Maybe we should have taken out a bigger loan and done this instead. Like, I go back sometimes and retrace my decisions and get concerned about the options I didn't take.
Yep.
Which is something that's pretty inherent to maximizers.
I think I'm the other one. What's that? Sufficers? Satisficers?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm the other one to a point where it probably annoys you.
It does, but it's good for me. Like, because
because I'm like, yeah, we made the decision. I'm happy with it. Let's keep on moving. Right. You're like, why aren't you worrying about these things? I was like, because you can't change it now.
Yeah, you say that to me so frequently, but that's healthy. I am very proud to say that I think the one key decision that I have made where I very much adopted the satisficer mentality was about us. And I think that in that decision-making process, when I was reaching out, deciding whether or not to reach out to you again to like reinitiate our relationship, right?
To write me my song.
Yes. I think that in that moment, once I had gone through that soul-searching process of identifying my values and looking at the biblical criteria for a spouse and seeing how you lined up with that, and once that choice was made, to me, that was the end of that decision-making process, right? I could be very content and very solid in the idea that you were the right choice, right? Not that you were perfect or that you were my soulmate, and we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Or that our relationship was going to be perfect.
It's not.
It's pretty good, but no. But I was convinced after going through that I could work with you.
Yeah.
So I have a theory that our current dating culture, and I mean both our worldly dating culture and our church dating culture, pressures people to become maximizers in their personal relationships.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think there's a handful of different ideas that contribute to that, right? So we brought up the concept of soulmates.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever believe in soulmates? Was that something that was like a thing for you? The idea that you were going to bump into the one?
I think I've said those words, but I was almost saying it in a way that was like the one for me in this moment.
Right.
Like not like the one in the world that happened to be born in my region and I was going to run into, and this is the only one that I would ever meet.
Right.
That should be the mate of mine, and if I miss it, I will be forever alone.
Right.
But it was, I don't think I ever internalized that concept completely.
I think there were times when I really did love the idea that there was just going to be like someone in some part of the world with like a homing beacon that I would eventually find my way to, right?
Yeah.
That like, we would just sort of like beep our way closer and closer to each other until, our God-given destinies brought us into the same place and we would suddenly be present together.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I prayed for my future wife.
Absolutely.
But not with the mindset of it being one singular person.
Correct. Yeah, I think we get ourselves into trouble with that when we extrapolate the idea that we want God to prepare a person for us to be with and to orchestrate an encounter with someone that's good for us.
Yeah.
To mean that there is only one chance.
Yeah.
Right. And what I think that does, and why this kind of forces a maximizer mentality about relationships, is that I think it puts an immense amount of pressure and risk on that choice.
Oh, yeah.
Like the choice of who you date and who you eventually marry becomes this massive, risky, complicated endeavor.
Whenever you have that much pressure on a relationship, you also run the risk of reading into things.
Oh, talk about that. Yeah, that's good.
Because you're looking for that one singular God-given relationship that is the only one, you're looking for the writing on the wall. Every time that person says something that is godly, you're like, oh, this person is so spiritual, and I'm being intentionally like dramatic, but that also goes the other way too.
Yeah, the converse of like, oh, they sent me an ambiguous text message, or they seemed distant, or they laughed at a joke that I don't agree with.
Yeah. Are they a sinner that is going to be a potential risk to my spiritual walk? And is this not the one? Because a person that is right for me would want to protect my spirituality, and
well, and not even always from like a spiritual standpoint.
No,
right?
I know, but if you really want to read into it, you could.
Yeah, well, and we also we cultivate these lists of criteria, right? Sometimes actual lists, sometimes just like sort of mental checklists of like.
You had a list.
Yeah, but I didn't have a list when I picked you. I had a list that I had when I was a teenager.
Oh, okay.
That I had then balled up and thrown away, eventually. But, and
Anyways.
it didn't say much really of anything, but like some people have actual lists of like criteria that they're looking for in a partner. But some of the things you might put on that list are so, they represent to you this idea of what the perfect best partner could be, that maximized vision. But at the end of the day, they might not really actually matter in terms of that person's ability to be a great partner for you, right?
Yes.
Like I wanted, someone tall and handsome. I wanted someone who was like, you hit those. I wanted someone who was extremely well educated.
Oh, I didn't hit that one.
Nope. That's okay. But like that was something on my list because I thought that would make that person better for me.
Yeah.
Right. That I needed somebody who was I'm using a lot of air quotes here, equal in their knowledge and academic achievement, because those were the things that I thought were important to maximize, right?
Yeah.
Spoiler, I don't really need someone with a PhD to have a great life.
Yeah.
Like, in fact, I really think that I didn't need someone whose head was in the academic clouds all the time.
Oh, you'd be so into yourself.
I would. True.
If you married someone who had also a high academic achievement, if he was not humble, I could see there'd be a lot of headbutting.
Oh yeah, 100%. It would be rough. I don't think I could be with someone who was also real booky, because you get me out of my head.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're like, yeah, but does that really matter?
Yeah.
Like, and I need that in my life. The same way that you need someone to teach you how to critically engage with research, so that you don't
and teach me how to speak.
Well, more. I imagine if you
the words.
The words. I imagine that you would have ended up like drinking the Kool-Aid on some sort of like fringe theory about
probably.
Yeah, and have like, joined a prepper commune or something.
I'm not that follower, I promise.
I don't think you're that much of a follower, but I think you would enjoy the camaraderie of that.
Oh
space.
Yeah, I would enjoy the camaraderie for sure.
Yeah. So I think both of us needed different things than what we were maybe taught to maximize.
Yeah.
Right. And I think our dating culture forces that, because we put an immense amount of pressure on that choice. We say you have to find the right person for you because failure's not an option. Divorce isn't an option. And like we agree with that, right? We don't think that divorce should be a safety valve.
Yeah.
But the reality is there are people that are viable options who are not perfect. In fact, all of the viable options are not perfect.
Yeah, this is actually a point I want to bring up.
Mm-hmm.
There are sometimes people who are your ideal of what you like. Maybe there's your parents or someone you really look up to, or a aspiring couple that you're like, oh yes, I want to marry someone like them.
Yeah.
They're probably several years older than you. They've probably been married for a long time. You have not seen the molding process that has taken them for them to become that person, whether it be spiritually, physically, emotionally, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Having the vernacular to be able to communicate your emotions is a skill. Having the ability to tell someone that, hey, I can create a space that makes you feel safe is also a skill.
Right.
So, like, these are things that you're not born with innate abilities like that. So when you're trying to find someone to marry, you're looking for someone with the qualities that has the ability to learn and adapt.
Right.
You're not looking for someone who if they already have the skills, great. But it's one of those things, it's like, let's go to the potter and clay analogy. Like, God is constantly molding us. He's shaping us all the time. And let's take it to a less spiritual sense. Let's use it as a more relational. Even in our relationship, we've been married now for 8 years as of last week.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. Actually this week. Sorry. Anyways.
Time flies.
Yeah. And the people we were when we first got married and when we fell in love with, we are completely different people already.
100%.
But the thing is, we didn't fall out of love with each other because we changed. We fell in love with the aspects of each other that said, hey, we are willing to learn and grow together.
Right. We knew that we were made of the right stuff.
Yeah. And we fell in love with our mindsets and the goals that we had, and we wanted to do it together.
Really important point within that I think we need to call out. What you're describing is like you have to recognize someone's potential and their ability to grow into those qualities.
Yeah.
But it's very important to also note that your spouse is not the one that shapes you.
Absolutely not.
It's the hand of God. And so what you're looking for is, does this person have the right outlook and the right raw materials for God to bring those things to fruition in their life, right? We're never going to be able to change each other.
No.
Right? Now, me being with you and observing the fruits of your life and your outlook have impacted me.
And vice versa.
Right. But it impacts me because we allow God to shape us that way.
Yeah.
Like, the reason why that works is because God is present, demonstrating to each of us, I think, why those qualities are important.
Yeah.
So, like we were just talking about, you have made me, this is a fun anniversary reflection for us, you've made me so much more compassionate for people, and you've made me more patient for people. And ultimately, you've given me a much better sense of what's actually important to me and what's not. You've helped me adjust my perfectionism to, hey, like, let's handle what we can handle right now. Let's deal with what we can do today. Let's save the worry for tomorrow. You have brought balance to me in that way. And I think I've done some of that for you too.
You absolutely have.
Yeah.
You've given me the understanding of how to look at a problem from every angle and say, yes, you're right, there is this perspective, but let's look at it from these other 3 perspectives to make sure we're thinking about it well. That might be the overthinker in you, but
but it helps
but
you.
It helps me,
right.
It helps me be able to do that. You make me want to be a better parent. Like, you make me want to, make is a strong word. Your actions that you have with our kids and your intentionality makes me want to be more intentional with our kids too. And at the end of the day, like, we have the same goal, and that is to help people. And I see your constant love for that growing, and it makes it easier for me to want to do that as well.
So I would say, like, we inspire change in each other.
Yeah.
But we do not affect change in each other.
And you don't force change.
Right.
And you don't expect it.
That's a really good point. So when we got married, and I remember this being a very intentional decision on my part, right? I remember saying, I am choosing this man.
Yes.
And if his identity changes, and by that I was thinking about the career you were doing at that point. Good thing I said this to myself then.
Complete U-turn.
Yeah. Because at the time you were a nursing student, you were planning to go become a nurse. We had this plan. I was going to go to grad school. And I said in prayer out loud, Father, if my plans change, if Stephen's plans change, I am committed to building a life with him, regardless of those changes. And I think that's the mindset we have to be in as satisficers when it comes to our relationships. I recognized in you the raw materials of a servant, of the qualities that Timothy describes, or that Paul describes to Timothy, that deacon should have, right?
Yeah.
I recognized in you strengths that I didn't have, and alignment with the values that I thought were really important. And that was enough to make me say, regardless of how you evolve in your focus and in your walk and everything else, I will be content. I will choose to be content. And I think that is counterintuitive to what the world says about dating, which says that I can be content when I find someone who checks every box on my list. And that's not realistic. There is no one who checks every box. And if you have that in your mind, if you've got that maximized idea that I can only be with the person who's perfect for me, and that person is going to complete me, and we're just going to click like two puzzle pieces, and we're going to take on the world as a power couple because we hit all the right marks and we do all the right things.
Yeah.
Then if you find someone who fits that, they will disappoint you.
Yeah.
And your satisfaction with your choice is going to be called into question again and again, because human beings fall short.
Yeah.
And there is always nuance to everyone. You and I have made mistakes in our relationships that, had we not had the preemptive grace for each other by saying, I am committing to whatever version of you comes out of this growth process.
Yeah.
It would have shaken our foundation.
Oh, 100%. I'm sorry to our consistent listeners who have heard me say this time and time again, but I love applying the fruits of the Spirit to not just our relationships when we're witnessing to people, or when we're trying to show someone Jesus' likeness, right? But think about applying that to the person you're wanting to marry.
Right.
Like, apply the fruits to a relationship with your wife or with your husband and say, is this the type of person that would display these fruits in a relationship?
And inspire them in me.
Yeah, because think about that. All of them apply so well to me giving you the best version of myself.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
And when things go differently than we expect, you have all the tools in your toolkit to be able to adapt and say, hey, let's figure out how to hit the ground running in a different direction together.
Yeah.
But another point I wanted to kind of roll back to what you were saying a minute ago is also trying to find someone with the mindset of accomplishing a specific goal.
You mean like finding that person is the goal?
No.
Okay.
I mean doing something with that person is the goal.
Interesting.
Like, even if you want to go the spiritual route and say, I want to find someone who wants to be a missionary.
Right. Or I want to find
Singular,
someone who
and that is
a
your
preacher.
Yeah, that is my main requirement for them.
Right.
I'm almost saying, and forgive me if you don't agree with this, that's a little dangerous.
Yeah.
Because life happens, life changes, and you don't know fully where God's going to take you in the process. And if you say, hey, we need to go to the mission field right after we get married, and God says, no, you're not, because you're not ready for it.
Yeah.
And you need to have some molding done, and you need to grow. You might be completely unsatisfied in your marriage if that is your main goal for that relationship. So it could be a totally noble goal.
Yeah.
But if that is your main criteria for finding someone, and apply that to whatever main goal that is, saving all the puppies in the world, whatever it may be, just make sure you find someone who is adaptable, who is willing to learn, willing to admit they're wrong, but also willing to tell you when you need to maybe change as well. Not in like a domination way, but more of like a, hey, what you said is
holding you accountable.
Yeah, holding you accountable. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because that's grounds for a working relationship.
Right.
to be able to adapt to your surroundings, and when your finances are not going the way you expected them to go, or if you have a death in the family or something happens,
right.
you know that your spouse has the tools in his or her toolkit to be able to say, hey, let's live life together.
Right. I mean, think about the arc of the people that we see in Scripture, right? And I'm going to use the term man because we see a lot of men. A lot of our long-term stories have to do with the arc of a specific hero of the faith, right?
Sure.
Often male. But think about, we think about Moses, right? Joshua, Gideon, David, these giants of the word, right? Imagine being a woman meeting Moses as the exiled prince and murderer, meeting Moses as the shepherd in the desert talking to bushes, meeting Moses as the prophet standing before Pharaoh, meeting Moses as the man at the foot of Sinai with his face veiled with the glory of God, right? That's one human man that in his life has gone through this massive evolution of the giftings God was pouring into him, right? And the raw materials were there in the murderous exiled Egyptian prince who saw his brother, his countrymen being beaten and took matters into his own hands, but God hadn't shaped him into the final tool that he was going to use to deliver Israel, right? And to deliver his law. And so we're not saying that you should go after somebody who does not represent your values at the beginning because you think that they'll change. They have to have the values first. They have to align with the vision of the life that you want to lead in the sense of what you want your life to contribute to. But they don't need to have all the bells and whistles yet. And they don't need to have all the skills or all the tools yet, because those can be brought to bear over time if they're willing to be humble and learn and position themselves at the foot of the cross. What are you looking at me like that for?
No, I'm realizing something.
Yeah.
Do you know why that's so scary for people?
Why?
Finding an incomplete person. They can't control the variables.
Yeah. This is all about control, because we think that if we find the perfect person, we guarantee that our life will be good. Because we know what the divorce rate says, and we know the stigma that comes from a failed marriage. Some people have experienced that firsthand, right? And they feel that they can't risk being with someone who's not going to check every box. I think we could stay on this for forever, and we need to spend some more time on this, but I want to come back to the whole idea of choice and decision making and how we kind of move forward from this.
So we've done a lot of rambling.
On brand for us.
Is this us just telling people that they just need to settle?
Okay. We're talking about the S word.
Uh-oh. Yeah.
Relationships. So, yes and no is the answer to this. And if everyone just got real sweaty palmed, don't worry. You're going to be okay. When we hear the word settle, the way we use it now, what we're referencing is the idea of settling for less, right? When people say, I don't want you to settle, or don't settle.
Yeah, it has a negative connotation.
Right. It comes from, that phrase, right? I don't want you to settle for less than you deserve. Settle for less than you are worth, right? We agree. You do not want to settle for less than you are worth and less than you deserve, right? But I want to reclaim that term and encourage people to settle in the sense that I want people to come to rest, right? Imagine settling the way that mountains do, and the way that homes do when they're well built, and the way that, leaves do in the fall, right?
Yeah.
Settle and come to a place of stillness and contentment with what you know you need versus what you think you want, right? Settling for less would be to choose someone who does not align with your values, right?
Yeah.
Who cannot be the person that you need because they are not capable of doing that, or because their own values will draw them in another direction, right? that would be settling for less.
Yep.
But when you find someone who aligns with your values, and if you don't know how to do that, if you're not sure what your values are, we can help you with that. We understand that we're throwing that term around a lot, and we haven't unpacked it all in this episode. But your values are the things that your life should contribute to. That what your values are is the answer to the question, what should be different about the world because you were on it, right?
Yep.
When you find someone who aligns with those things, who also is driving for the same goals, right? And when that person also has the same priorities that you do, and their logistics match up, they can live in the same place that you can live. They can, exist with the salaries that you guys are bringing to the table. They can work with you. Consider settling into that opportunity.
Yeah.
In the way that you say, I have met all my needs with this person, and I am finding myself a home in a place where I know I can grow.
Yep.
Right? It does not mean that you're signing yourself up for a life of drudgery and sadness being married to someone who disappoints you.
Yeah.
Because you have already established that you are going to dream the same dreams as this person. And I don't think there's anything more satisfying in a marriage than sharing passions and dreams and goals together.
Yeah. Couldn't agree with that more.
Yeah. Did we settle?
No.
Did we settle?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's where relationship 2.0 came in for us whenever we kind of decided to get back together.
Yeah.
Because, for the record, I never wanted to break up with you.
Yeah, that's fine. Go. You can rub it in. I get it.
But
yeah,
when we decided to come back,
mm-hmm.
it gave me time to reflect and still decide that I wanted you.
Yes.
Right? So we had been away for 8 months, and you came back to me and said, hey, you literally laid your heart out and said, I want you too. And to me, I knew we could work together.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that with the way your mind worked and our communication was so important to me.
It was one of your values.
It really was.
Yeah.
And so when I saw that in you, I wanted that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew that we would be adaptable.
Yeah.
And it kind of took the fear out of it because, yes, I cannot control every variable of our life going forward, but I knew because we could communicate and because we could learn how to talk to each other and we knew how to say, hey, we were critical thinkers too. And not in the sense of intellectual. I'm not, because she is intellectual. I have learned to I have learned to become more in that realm, right?
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm saying when I say critical thinking. I mean, learning to adapt to your surroundings and saying, hey, how can I solve this problem?
And willing to question your own assumptions.
Yeah. And also challenge your motives and everything, all the above.
Those are two key values that were that we were aligned on.
Yeah.
Right? Our communication, clear communication, being able to speak well to each other and with each other, and our ability to engage critically with the world around us.
Yes.
Those are two core values of our relationship that were aligned from the beginning.
Yep.
And that kind of were our compass, I think.
Yeah. So when you came to me and said, hey, can we get back together? It was a no-brainer to me, even though I made you wait for a month. But so that being said, because I knew we could work together. It's the moral of the story. Yeah. I knew we would be okay no matter what came our way.
I think an important point to make is that if you are the type of person who always looks for what you've missed by your choices, right? If you are always living in a sense of what if and regret about what you could have chosen to do differently versus what you did choose now, if you have that maximizer mindset, which I've struggled with, you will find opportunities in your marriage to confirm your doubt in your choices, right? Because your spouse will make mistakes, or you will make mistakes in your relationship. And if you've internalized the belief that I should have made other choices, or there were so many other options available, right? That will follow you into your relationship. And I think that's really dangerous.
Yeah.
Because if you have this concept that, there were hundreds of people that I could have married, and what if I made the wrong choice, right? When another option presents itself in your social space, and at some point there always will be someone that presents themselves, you are going to have a much harder time staying true to your commitment and not developing a sense of resentment and not developing a sense of jealousy around the other options that are available to you,
Yeah.
right? And I think that in some ways we set our married couples up for failure by not addressing this early.
Yeah.
And telling them that it's not just about committing to be with this person. It's about committing to be with this person and committing to ignore what other opportunities may or may not have been out there to begin with.
Yeah. I do want to caveat
Mm-hmm.
saying all this.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about people who are in abusive relationships.
Not at all. No.
Like, abusive relationships are a whole different scenario. We're talking about healthy relationships that are trying to learn and grow together.
Right.
And you might have every family's going to have their dysfunction,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not talking about people who are taking advantage of their spouse.
No, and we're not telling people that are in very unhealthy marriages that
you need to be
right,
you need to
settle into this nest when
Yeah.
it's full of thorns and trauma,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, seek counsel, go to counseling, go to therapy,
Right.
but that's not what we're talking about.
I also want to acknowledge that there are single people probably listening to this that are going, what are you talking about with choices? I have no options,
Yeah.
right? And I want to acknowledge that that's the real experience of a lot of people, where maybe you really do not have other singles in your area, or that are close to you, or that you just get exposure to. We understand that. We hear it frequently. But I want to still challenge that in our culture, the perception of how many options are available in the world, right?
Yeah.
Via the internet, via our church communities and organizations, right? I remember going to youth congress and thinking, like, there's all the, as a teenager, right? A young adult, there's all these single guys in here. I went to youth, this is terrible. I went to youth congress one year, about a month after a very, very intense breakup. And oh my goodness, was I on the prowl. Like, I remember telling my friend, I'm like, I will flirt with every single man that walks into this auditorium. Have not ever successfully flirted with a man in my life, by the way. Like, maybe. I mean, depending on how you define flirt. Like, I was not
Sure.
graceful about it. It did not work. It yielded nothing for me, by the way. But, like, I remember that perception of, like, there are so many options here.
Yeah.
Right? And so the disappointment when nothing came of that was that much higher. My expectations were so elevated because of the wide variety that I thought was available to me.
Yeah.
I joined the Apostolic Singles Network at one point. Nothing against them. They do great work, but it was that same sense of, like, look at all these options. And then as I saw people, I was like, I don't really see myself with anyone,
Actually, I know we're going a little long, but I kind of want to cover this topic real quick.
Yeah.
We've had people in our pipeline
Mm-hmm.
who have very limited circumstances.
In terms of, like, the options available to
In
them.
terms of the options available to them.
Right.
And whether it be living arrangements, circumstances, family arrangements, whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
could be very difficult. Or maybe they live in a rural area and there's not a lot of options literally available. And we've provided them with options where people have met their values. Right. And have been able to have been accommodating to some of their needs in terms of their circumstances.
Right.
Right. And even checked off some of their preferences.
Right.
But because not every one of their boxes were checked off, they just disregarded the whole idea of that person because their master list of items for that person
Mm-hmm.
didn't meet. And so they didn't even give it a chance.
And we're not just talking about physical preferences here, guys, before anyone
No.
reads into it that way. Like, I've had a scenario where someone would say something like, this person feels like they're called to this ministry, right? This type of platform ministry.
Yeah.
And I feel called to this slightly different type of platform ministry. And I would really like someone who's doing the same platform ministry with me.
And
right?
me and Megan just look at each other
like 2 days ago, there was no one on the table.
yeah.
Right.
And again, we're not trying to tell you to like marry the first person you meet in our services.
No, not at all.
But we're also saying get to know people first. Get to see where their heart is.
Yeah.
We literally don't charge per date. So there's nothing that's going to hurt that person to just giving it a try to see if they could feasibly fit with this person.
Right.
Because realistically, all of the big boxes are checked off that are important to that person. And they know going into that call that it could work.
Right. And, guys, just to put this out there, very few people serve in the same exact ministry for their entire walk.
And quite frankly, I think it's unhealthy to serve in one particular type of ministry for your whole life.
You can have blinders form, right?
Yeah.
I think it's healthy for you to kind of move into different phases and different seasons of your life.
Yeah.
Where you are specifically positioned at that point to be all things to the people that you're going to encounter in that ministry.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's heartbreaking sometimes because we'll see people that are like, wow, like this is a viable option where there aren't that many viable options.
Yeah.
Right. We wish we could snap our fingers and just generate someone who fits all of the things. But sometimes it's like, man, we are 85, 90% of the way there. And that, 10% of missing items on the checklist is enough for the person to say no. And we want people to lean into their discernment and their own opinions, but you need to understand where your opinions are coming from.
Yeah.
And if they're not coming from your values, if they're coming from that pressure to maximize every choice and to only go with the absolute best option, you need to ask yourself if you're willing to sacrifice the time that you're spending alone instead of maybe using that time to grow with someone into their full state, right? Like there's people get worried about the opportunity cost of like, well, if I make the wrong choice, I won't be able to go back and make this other choice, right? I'll miss out on the opportunity to do X, Y, and Z with this person. If you are turning away people that are closely aligned with your values and priorities because of small, questionably frivolous things. I'm using the term frivolous very carefully. I don't want to dismiss anybody's needs. But if they are not things that are inherent to your values and priorities and logistics, and that is causing you to turn away from someone, you need to question about whether you're willing to take on the opportunity cost of being alone for longer and what you were going to miss out on by holding out for the perfect thing. Right?
Yeah. And this might rub some people the wrong way. You need to challenge if you're asking the right questions.
Yeah.
Just challenge your questions you're asking. Challenge your criteria.
I also wanted to make sure that we are not those married people that are telling singles you're too picky, because generally speaking, singles are not. We want you to be picky about the right things, right? Insist on alignment with your values.
Yeah.
Insist on alignment with your priorities. Insist on logistical compatibility, right? They've got to be able to live in the same zip code as you. They have to want to parent the same way that you do. They have to want to serve to the same level that you do, even if it's in a different space, right? Insist on alignment with those things. And then maybe let go of the rest, right?
Yeah.
Like, give yourself room to breathe in the other areas that don't apply to those.
Yeah.
So be picky. Do not settle for less than your values, but settle into an opportunity to work with someone, even if it's going to take time for them to be the person that you ultimately envision growing old with, right?
Yeah.
Give them some preemptive grace.
Yeah.
And then go into that choice when you're able to make it without giving yourself the option to regret the choices you didn't make before.
Yeah.
This has been a meaty topic. I feel like we could talk about facets of this for a gajillion years, but I think we should probably call it here. So just to summarize, to summarize, go take a look at the work of Dr. Barry Schwartz if you want to get a sense of this for yourself. I'm going to link a really handy dandy summary PDF that someone put together of his book, The Paradox of Choice. In case you just want to skim it and get a very high level sense of what's in it. I think it's fine if you want to go read it as well. We'll also link the article that he wrote sort of in response to the critique of his work. I think that's a valuable resource as well. But you should take this with a grain of salt, suss it out in your spirit and discern how you feel like you should or shouldn't apply this idea. Even if you don't buy into anything about that concept, the takeaway that we want to leave you with is that focusing on how many choices there are and on finding the perfect option might be diminishing your chances of finding a good option. And we want to help you really understand what a good option looks like for you. So we're grateful to the people that are opening themselves up to that process of exploration.
Oh, absolutely.
There are people doing very brave work.
Oh, yeah.
By putting themselves in scenarios that they would not have been willing to try, meeting people that they would have maybe not sought out before, but putting some faith in that process of identifying alignment. I'm very proud of those people.
Yeah. And what's cool is even if they don't end up getting married, a lot of these people are having just really positive, and I'm going to say exploratory, but exploratory experiences of just talking to people and learning more about themselves as a result of it.
Right.
So sometimes saying yes to someone you normally wouldn't say yes to could help you learn more about yourself and what you want in a person.
Absolutely. Babe, it's been 8 years.
8 years.
Since we made our choices.
That's right.
I have not regretted it.
Oh, no.
There are days, especially right now, because we're in the process of really, I feel like we're in another phase of rapid change in our roles and who we are and how we run our lives, right?
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that I'm doing that with you, because it feels like I have such freedom to become what I need to become. You're not holding me to some kind of invisible standard of what you thought your wife had to be, you know. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I love you.
I love you too.
Thanks for doing this with me way too late at night with way too big of a topic.
It's okay. I love this topic. It was I was hoping to start 2 hours earlier, but we got through it.
We got there. If you have questions for us, or if you want to think harder about this topic, or if you want to yell at us about referencing pop psychology, fair enough. You can send those thoughts and questions to questions@synchronyproject.com. We'd love to talk about them. We'd love to discuss them with you and maybe bring them up in a future podcast episode. What else do we want to tell people right now? Anything important for them to know?
Nope, we don't have any deals or sales or anything going on right now. So
quick shout out though for something we haven't talked about in a while. If you are sort of in that process of figuring yourself out and you're using our podcast and resources as a way to sort of self-analyze, as a reminder, we do have a course out.
Yep.
Which is about identifying dating barriers, how you connect with people. It's a great resource if you struggle to connect with people in the wild. It's great if you just want to find it easier to have conversations with strangers that you want to witness to or build connections with in any other aspect of life. So that is available even if you are not a Synchrony community member. You do not have to be subscribed or in the matching pipeline to take advantage of that. You don't have to be a certain age. So go check out our link tree in our social media or our website, and you can get access to that course. And we'd love to see more people engage with that.
Yep. Please review, comment.
Smash that like button.
Yeah.
Have a great week, everyone.
See you later.